Hi, my name is Dale Mazzarella. I'm a Fly Fishers International Master Casting Instructor, a longtime Wyoming fishing guide, and an award-winning coach and educator. I've put together this video series that I hope will help you become a better fisherman, catch a lot more fish, and I hope you enjoy it. So enjoy yourself, have a good time, and let me know what you think. So this is Chapter 2, Lesson 6, Slackline casts, and we're going to show you about 5 or 6 varieties of slackline casts. Normally, these slackline casts are taught as a technique to present a fly downstream to a fish without spooking the fish and to prevent drag. But we're going to show you a couple other ones that are also used for other purposes. We'll do that towards the end of this segment. But there's a lot of uses for a slackline cast, really pretty sophisticated techniques to get them to work, but hopefully we'll give you enough clues how to do that that'll work for you. What you need to do is check out the Chapter 1 tip casting video. That's going to help you a lot. And also Chapter 3, Task 7, which is the CI task, and it goes into more detail about how to make some of these casts. So all those will help you with background, and then hopefully we're going to be doing a lot of replication of both of those two lessons, but this should be a pretty useful video for you to learn how to do this. Summer of 2018, we're going to be doing this whole series on the water, so you can actually see what it looks like on the water with currents. So keep that in mind and make sure you check it out. Probably by September we should have that up. Some of the principles of slackline casting that's important. The biggest single principle, it's again, what happens, your rod tip determines what happens to your line. So if I stop my rod and wiggle it like this, I'm going to have my line do a bunch of things. If I stop my rod here and just stop, it's going to go up and drift down. You know, you're going to see a lot of things, but just remember that if it's not doing what you want it to do, it's all about the rod tip. We need to adjust the rod tip. Remember, in a normal slackline cast, which we're going to show first, the bigger the rod tip swing, the bigger the slack, the big waves are. The smaller the waves. And of course, the same thing related to that is, the smaller they are and the faster you go, the more you're going to have. The slower they are and the bigger they are, the fewer you're going to have. So we're going to demonstrate some of that close up with a rod and a line, and then I'm going to do it and you can see it, and then we're going to zoom in on the waves themselves so you can see the resultant wave from a particular rod tip motion. So I'm false casting, and then all I'm doing to make small waves, watch my rod tip. And one more time, watch the rod tip for small waves. Little bitty waves, rod tip's just doing this. Now watch the rod tip with big waves. The most commonly cited application for a slackline cast when you wiggle your fly line is because you're upstream, stream is coming down, here's a fish at the blue cone. If you landed a straight line, that fly is going to drag immediately before it hits. So what we've done is we put in a slackline cast, you can see right there, and as this fly right here lands maybe 2 or 3 feet in front of the fish, that doesn't spook the fish. Now it comes down and the first thing that fish sees is the fly. He doesn't, look how far away the line is. The line is still a good 8 feet from that fly. That fish, he doesn't even see that. So this is a deadly technique to catch a fish that's really spooky. Silver Creek is a place I fished. This is an excellent cast at Silver Creek and other creeks similar to that. Spring creeks, tail outs with very clear water, spooky fish, shallow water. For the normal pile cast, go to chapter 3, lesson 7, and you're going to get a lot of detail about how to do that. So let's go to the next one, which is my dump cast, what I call it. All you're doing is you're making your casts, and this is really important. You're not going to stop the rod and then come down. What you're doing is you're doing this, and you're just going to, instead of making a normal forward cast, you're going to just slowly bring the rod down. So it's just this. And also I think I have a little bit of that in chapter 3, lesson 7 as well. But you're just going back and forth, and right here, instead of bringing it forward hard, you just sort of just lazily bringing the rod down. The faster you bring the rod down, the faster that dump is going to be at the end, or the farther it's going to be in a more straight line you have between yourself and the dump. But if you come down, and you could actually pull your arm back like this, and you can have a dump 10 feet in front of you with 40 feet of line. And all that 40 feet is just stacked up in front of you. So you just have to play with it, but it's this. It's not this and then this. It's just nice and slow. It's a continuous stroke right all the way till your rod tip is almost on the bottom. So you're just going to have to play with that. So let's talk about a practical application for the dump cast. And this is actually one that I use about every other year, specifically for one fish that sits on Flat Creek in Jackson Hole, or just north of Jackson Hole. You're on the opposite side of the river where I would be when I'm casting. It's about 25 feet across at this point. This is the bank right here. This cone would extend out, and that cone would extend out. And this is a cove where the water's here is coming down this way, maybe, I don't know, it's like 7 or 8 miles an hour. It's fast. If you throw a dry fly into this fish, which is at the blue cone, and it's a straight line, the second it hits, it's going. You can't use a reach mend because your line will hit the bank where the indentation is. You can't use a curb cast. The only current cast you can use to get a drag-free drift to this fish is you got to use a dump cast. You could use a pile cast, but the problem with the pile cast is if wind's blowing, this is going to be very inaccurate. Right now, we have a wind that's coming this direction at about 10 miles an hour. You can probably see the grass moving a little bit. And I made this cast onto that fish. Now, you can see that this is the yarn right here. The yarn's right there. That's the fly. You can see that's a 8-foot leader. That means there's 8 feet of leader stacked up inside of here, plus this. So now I throw in that beetle, which is what I usually use to catch him, is right here. And then look what happens. Here's the current. Current does this. And finally, that beetle moved. So that yarn, I don't know if you can see it where you are, but there's a little piece of yarn right there on that blue cone. That yarn just now moved, and you can see how much slack I created in here. That fish, that's probably the only way to get that fish is with this cast. I don't know any other cast that can get this other than throwing a streamer in here, stripping it out, and hoping he takes it. Other than that, there's not many casts you can work. So that's a really important way to use the dump cast. We're going to show you one other way that's pretty good too. Let's talk about slack a little bit, because you just seen a big pile of stuff sitting out on that dump cast. A lot of people say, well, man, how do you set the hook? Well, I've got 2 responses to that. The first one is you don't want any slack between your indicator and your fly, or that you don't want any. You want your fly to run just as naturally as it possibly can. But as far as the fly line itself, you take a 9-foot rod and you stick it out in front of you and you move it in this arc and even back a little bit, plus the momentum, you can set a hook with 10 to 12 feet of slack in your line in that fast. It's just this, and you set the hook. So my feeling is I would much rather have slack in a line and have a good presentation, which then might, potentially cause me to miss a fish, rather than have a fly that's dragging and have no chance of a fish even eating it. So these casts, obviously, they create tons of slack in the line, especially close to the fly. But again, you can take a lot of that slack out. I just know we catch an awful lot of fish that other people don't catch, because we're willing to deal with the slack in the line, and in return, we get a perfectly drag-free drift of our fly. Another really useful application of the dump cast for me. Play like this is a fish right here, and this is a tail out of a pool. The stream is coming towards you. This is the tail out, and this is a lip where the stream drops off. And all of you know that a fish, that now all of a sudden, when it drops, it gets a lot faster. So normally what happens, if you were to fish and put a fly right here, which is where my fly is right now, by the time it got to this fish, it's going to be dragging. It's going to be looking like a motorboat going down the road. So in order to prevent that, what I'm doing is I'm doing a dump cast, trying to land a dump behind the fish, the leader and the fly's right here in front of the fish. And now let's take a look at what happens. You've got your lip right here, downstream lip, boom, it just really moves right here. So this is pulling, and there, by the time it gets all this slack out of the system, that fly is over that fish without any drag at all. So those are two applications that I use a lot. By the way, when you're using these, when you're first doing it, always, if you're gonna make a mistake short, not long. In this particular case, if you made it long, you're gonna line the fish and he's gonna take off probably, especially in most tail outs are pretty skinny. Same thing with that first fish we talked about with the cove. If you make it long, you're gonna be stuck in the bushes and then you're done. Pulling it off the bush, even if you manage to pull it off, is gonna spook the fish. So I always try, it may take me 4 casts to get my fly right where I want it, but my first cast, my fly may land here. My second cast here, and I'm just making slight little bitty adjustments as I go to make sure I don't just put a line over this fish. Same thing in that cove we had. My first time, maybe all my slack is over here and my fly lands here. Whatever, I don't want to make my first cast and have my fly land in the bushes because it's going to defeat the purpose of the entire cast. So this is something you can practice. You can put a bunch of cones up and practice. It's really a very useful cast. So let's show the super tuck cast with a noodle, and I'll try to go through it. And then we're going to zoom in and also go slow motion as I'm doing it live. But basically, in order to do the tuck cast, you need a downward trajectory in the front. So this is your trajectory. The other thing you'll notice is that I stop pretty high. I mean, I think I'm stopping up here, but looking at a tape, I'm probably more like here. But the point is, so you're here and on your delivery cast, you're gonna stop here and you'll see me trying to lift my rod. So it's stop and do this. You can also add a haul if you want to. So it's back and forth and then stop and lift. So it's this. And by pulling that rod tip up, I'm not sure what the physics of it are, but it tends to pile more line. So look at the slow motion and see if you can do this. It's just gonna take practice. It's just the right amount of timing. It's pretty difficult to do this without throwing a tailing loop on that forward cast. But work at it, and it's a good cast. You'll also see the result of it after I make that cast. You're going to see the result of what the line looks like, and you're going to see that you get 2 or 3 or 4 feet of slack, and you can use it in a lot of different situations.